Is everybody in? Let's see. Yep, looks like it. Hi, I am Paula Ludwig with the Atlantic Institute. I want to welcome everybody in. Here at the Atlantic Institute, we are all about promoting dialogue and meeting your next door neighbor and positive dialogue and all of that. Part of the things we do every year is we call it a tour of faiths. We normally go from different churches, synagogues, houses of worship, but this year we're unable to do it in person, so we're going to do virtual ones. And Willie has decided to give us his take on his religion. And so I'm going to turn it over to Willie. And if everybody can mute until they have questions, that would be great. It cuts off on the distractions. So thank you. And Willie, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. First of all, for joining us. My name is Willie Pena. I'm a Scientologist. I've been a Scientologist in 1994. I began as a staff member in what's called the Miami organization, or Miami Org for short. I was staff for approximately 6 years, and as part of that, I was trained in various parts of Scientology and ethics, including the counseling services, course supervision, some of the ethics aspects of the faith, and various things. So by no means am I an expert. I am definitely not a representative of the church. I practice independently. The church is something I've left far behind. I haven't actually gone to an actual church about 2 weeks, but I've continued to do this independently. Are you guys able to hear my stuttering? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, so I see Shayla's got me. We have this, couple of you guys have got me. Okay, so I think what I'm gonna do is, if it keeps cutting out, I'm gonna switch to my phone. That seems to have a better connection. So if I keep cutting it, let me know, and I'll go here. So I'm gonna switch to my phone. I'll have a much better connection. I'm gonna rejoin the meeting in approximately 1 minute, and hopefully we'll have a much more stable connection. So I'll be right back. All right, be right back.
Hello, everybody. I figured I would jump on here and say hi. I was a few minutes behind getting off, and so I know Paula got on here to help. Let's see. How is everybody?
Willie was having problems with his, so he's getting in on his phone.
Okay, not a problem.
All right.
Look, I spruced up my background today. If anybody can tell, I've now done a virtual one. I've asked my children to have no blood loss during this event, just so we all know, because earlier my son ran into something and he gashed open his head. And so he's walking around with a big bandana around his head because that makes him feel better. And he's 4 and he gets what he picked. And I said, please leave me alone and no blood loss while I'm in here.
Oh, poor boy. Now, how did you put that virtual thing in the background?
If you go into the video at the bottom where it says stop video, there's a little caret right next to it. You click on that little caret and it has an option for backgrounds.
Oh, really? I don't think I can get it here.
It'll say choose virtual background, and when you click on that, it'll pull up a whole list of things that you can click on.
I'm going to unmute for a minute. Is there any way we can get the video from the last session with the Dharma?
With the Dharma group, yes.
Are you talking to me?
You know what? While we are sitting here waiting, I will copy and paste that link into let me find where I sent that to somebody, and I will copy and paste it into here.
Okay, so where are you copy pasting it to?
I'm going to copy and paste it into the chat section in here. All of them we are downloading, and then when we upload them, we're going to upload them like to YouTube or something like that. But here, I'm going to go in here. There is a chat section over here, and I'm just going to welcome.
I think Willie is back and he's signaling that he's coming.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay. I'm going to put the Dharma Center one in there. You should see that in the group chat. Hello, Willie.
Hello. So sorry about that. Sometimes my Wi-Fi goes in and out, so I decided to switch to my cellular connection. So the only problem is I can't see everybody. I'm not used to. Oh, there we are. There are some people. Hello, everybody. I can see 4 at a time. So I think my connection is more stable now. So I'm going to start over, if you don't mind, and give you my spiel again. I'm a Scientologist. I've been an independent Scientologist since 1994. I was originally a member of the official church. They're called orgs or organizations. So I was part of the Miami org as a staff member for about 6 years on and off. I left at one point and came back. And then about 2000, my wife at the time and I left, and we were kind of upset with the organization for a while, and then eventually got back into using the technology of Scientology without becoming members of the actual official church anymore. So now we're considered independent Scientologists. We're not really recognized by the official church. We're actually a little bit almost like apostates, if you'd say, but we still adhere to the original philosophy created by L. Ron Hubbard. So that's kind of where we're at. I'm not specifically critical of the church. Like you'll see a lot of people like Aaliyah Remini, who's got her show, very critical of Scientology. I'm not really one of those guys. I recognize that there's a lot of problems with the organization, but I'm not specifically a critic. I'm more of a supporter of Scientology and just use it as a regular person. So that's kind of my thing. And then as this being a Q&A, I don't really have a set presentation of what I'm going to talk about. I think I'd rather leave it up to you guys. And I guess, Christina, you can moderate and kind of take questions or whatnot, because I really can't see anybody. I see only 4 people, so I can't really see if people are waving at me or wanting to communicate. So if you can just kind of moderate, and I'll answer as best as I can from the viewpoint of someone who's not in the church, but was in the church and has a lot of training and a lot of behind the scenes kind of experience. There you go.
Very good. Thank you. So first, just to explain so everybody knows that Willie is actually my cousin that lives out in California.
Full disclosure.
Yeah, just so that you know. So if we chat back and forth, you'll understand. And in putting this together this year, I thought it would be great. We always have Christian Science participate for the past 2 years, but a lot of times Christian Science gets confused a lot with Scientology. And can you explain some of the differences?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Scientology is not a Judeo-Christian faith. It has nothing to do with Christianity. Christian Science is a Christian faith. So we don't really interfere with your own personal belief in Christ or Muhammad or whatever. We kind of leave that up to each individual and their upbringing and whatever they choose to follow. Scientology is pretty much an applied religious philosophy in that it's something to do as opposed to something to really believe in. As an example, let's say you wanted to improve something in your relationship. So another faith might say, okay, we're gonna pray to God. We're going to look to guidance from the universe. I'm going to meditate, various practices that each one does according to whatever they're comfortable with. We might say instead, okay, we're going to practice communication skills and give a concrete exercise on how to avoid getting mad when your spouse barks at you, for example. So it's more of an applied thing based on the fundamentals of Scientology. So the fundamental in communication would be, we have a triangle that's called the affinity, reality, and communication triangle. When you have those points in, affinity meaning liking, diss, or closeness, reality means that we agree on, this is a room, I'm talking to you, I'm wearing a bluish purple shirt, and communication is what we're doing now, talking. So it's a triangle, and that each point that you increases your total understanding of the other people. So we might say, okay, because of this ARC triangle, we're going to stop you from getting angry, which reduces affinity, which reduces your understanding of the other person, which reduces your communication. You don't want to talk to an angry person, and you don't like them, and you think they're crazy, so your reality's out, and you have a bad relationship with your spouse. So we might do exercises based on the ARC triangle, so that way you increase your ARC with a person, but with concrete exercises. So you might literally sit there, and I might be like, okay, we're going to practice this, and you're my wife, and you're a doo-doo head, and you have to sit there and not react until you feel comfortable. And then you go out and you interact with your real life spouse, and you will find that your relationship is a little bit better, because instead of reacting negatively, now you can control yourself. And your ARC with that person, your affinity or reality communication has increased, and you have a better life, right? Because you're not fighting as much. Your kids have a better life because you're not fighting as much, etc. That's kind of the twist, and kind of the thing which separates or distinguishes Scientology from not only Christian Science, but other faiths. Well, there are certain aspects of Scientology that you do kind of have to believe in, primarily that you're a spiritual being. That's the primary thing, and not just a meat animal, controlled by chemicals. That's a primary thing. But most of it is more like you do it and you experiment with it and you fit it into your life and see if it works. At least that's the way it's supposed to be.
Very interesting. Okay. Does anybody, if you have a question, if you want to raise your hand, then I can go ahead. You can unmute and ask your question. Because I'm guessing.
I have a question.
All right.
Do you want me to
Shayla.
Right. Why is it called Scientology?
It comes from the roots, science, which is knowledge, and logi, which is to know. So it really, literally means knowing how to know. It's the study of knowledge.
Okay.
And let me explain also what Dianetics is. Dianetics was a precursor to Scientology, and that means through the soul. Dianus. Dianetics means through the soul. So basically you're healing through the soul. And I think that's where we get confused with Christian Science, because Christian Science, I believe, also has a reputation for eschewing medical treatment and trying to heal just with the spirit. And we don't do that. We do it in conjunction. But it's a similar kind of a concept where we believe that if you're chronically ill, a lot of it has to do with stress. So
Right.
you try to relieve that stress.
Okay. Sarah has a question. She has her hand raised, and then we have Lindell that messaged me a question. So I will let Sarah go first.
Yeah, a lot of religious traditions have sort of a culture that goes along with them that isn't necessarily part of the religion, but many of the adherents share that same culture. Does Scientology have that as well?
If it does, I'm going to tell you right now that it's kind of a negative one. It's not really. Here's I'm going to qualify what I just said. When you go to like a Catholic church, I love Catholics. I was raised Catholic, so I love when you walk into a Catholic organization or anything Christian based, Jehovah's Witnesses, anything Judeo-Christian really. There's a sense of community and kind of love, and you feel the spirit. Any one of those, and you don't really get that with Scientology. It's more like if you get together with a bunch of Scientologists, the vibe is we are here to get things done. We are here to improve society. We're here to improve conditions.
what do we have to do that? But it's not a whole lot of sympathy and, I mean, there's compassion, of course, and love, but it's not the same feeling as, you know, Judeo-Christian religion. You don't have that same sense of, oh, we're going to come together for Christmas, we're going to come together for this holiday and celebrate as a community. And that's one of the things which is most lacking, I think, and here's my theory and my opinion. It is so that it doesn't interfere with whatever you are natively. So that you are Catholic, you go to your Catholic traditions, you get to do that, and you still practice your Scientology. That's only my opinion. I've never seen anything in writing which says this is why we don't have that sense of community. We don't have Sunday Mass. We have ostensibly a Sunday Mass, but it's just not the same. So really, Scientologists get together to get things done, to take on a project to help the community, to build something, but it's not like, hey, we're going to get together for a barbecue and chit chat and talk about Jesus. It doesn't really happen. Could be that we're just too new also. I mean, we started 1950, so it's still a relatively new movement.
Okay. There's two questions over here, and so they kind of are similar. So it would be, is there any belief in God or a higher power? And do you pray to someone?
Okay. There's not a specifically delineated entity that they worship. Again, that's also part of the, it's up to you. There is something called what's known as the eighth dynamic. And let me explain the dynamics. The dynamics in an individual are the components of life that that individual is trying to ensure survives. First one is obviously yourself. You're trying to survive. You're trying to make your way through life, have a healthy body, nutrition, things like that. A job, those are all part of your first dynamic. Second dynamic would be sex in the family. So that would be your spouse, your mate, your kids. That little group is your second dynamic, and you obviously want to do things to help that survive. Third dynamic would be any group you're involved in. Right now, this would be a third dynamic. It is a group of people coming together for a common purpose. You want this to survive so that, you know, you continue to do what you're doing. Fourth dynamic would be all of mankind, the entire planet. Fifth would be all of life. We inherently have a desire for all of life to continue. That doesn't mean we don't need animals, because it helps our survival, but it doesn't mean that we don't want all life to be wiped out. And we have a general tendency to not want to pollute our environment or kill things so that we have, you know, a place to live and we enjoy nature. Six would be the physical universe itself. As spirits, we need a playground or something like that. And this, you know, we want this around so we can communicate to each other and we have things to do and play with. Seventh would be the spiritual dynamic, which means thought, the world of the mind, anything spiritual that you can think of. And then the eighth dynamic is what I guess would be the closest to God, because it encompasses everything. It encompasses the concept of infinity. In Scientology, it's never addressed that there's a specific being that controls the eighth dynamic. It is not mentioned in anything I've ever seen, and I've been a Scientologist for 27 years. So we do not pray to a specific higher power. We could, what's known is create a postulate, which means create an idea or it's almost like a little prayer. Like, I want this to happen and whatnot. It wouldn't be directed to a specific entity. It wouldn't be directed to Jesus or whatnot, because again, in Scientology, you're free to kind of do that on your own, right? It's like whatever religion you are, you continue to do that. But you can create a postulate, which is, you know, I'm going to have a better financial situation in a year. Almost like a resolution. Or if you're familiar with the book, The Secret, you know, that kind of you're creating a future there. And who do you put it out to? You kind of put it out to yourself, you put it out to the universe, but you don't really direct it to a specific entity unless you have a specific belief in an entity, which Scientology doesn't tell you. So that's as best as I can say. There's not one that's dictated by L. Ron Hubbard or anybody else that we have to pray to. You get to choose.
Okay. So I kind of like get that you can have your own other faith, and then it's kind of like you can add Scientology into it.
Correct. Up to a point, because there's going to be conflicts. I'll tell you, there's going to be conflicts. At some point, as you reach the upper levels of Scientology, you're going to have to, there's going to be a little bit of a disagreement. because in Scientology, you're ultimately responsible for everything that happens to you. It's on you. It's on you. And you are supposed to grow so that you can control more and more of your environment. That might clash directly with the Christian belief that God controls everything.
Oh, I understand.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Okay. Yes.
So there might be at one point, you're going to have to figure that out, but that's part of everyone's spiritual path anyways, right? Because even living through life, you'll be like, God, I keep praying to God and nothing happens. Well, you might want to do some soul searching and figure out why. And so in Scientology, you might hit that point as well, where it's like, if I'm responsible for everything that's happening, is there even a God? What's God really like? Am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? Why is karma hitting me? What's this? You know, there's things which aren't just handed to you in a silver platter. So there might be some soul searching that you hit at one point. And I'm going through it myself. I've been, you know, life is not easy. And despite all the tools that I've had, there's still a lot of growth left. And so I do sometimes, you know, question like, where does everything fit in? I believe there's truth in every religion, and that's why I love what you're doing. This is great. There's increasing understanding of all these communities, which is awesome, because I think that every single group has a piece of the truth. And if we dialogue like this, we'll all kind of get to a better place and a higher truth for each one of us. So with Scientology, you're gonna hit that point where it's like, well, if this is, you know, Islam, for example, Islam and Scientology will not be compatible at certain points if you're a very strict Muslim. It's just not going to happen, because we believe in individual freedom, you know, very individual freedom. We don't believe in being subservient really to anybody to the degree that Islam is, which is surrender. So that there's certain things where I think the lower levels of Scientology, no conflict at all. You know, there's a lot of things that'll help you study better, communicate better, and those are really valuable things anyway. That's what everyone wants. Mm-hmm. And then the upper concepts, there might be some strife. And I'm the only one who's going to say that. Everyone's going to say, "Oh no, you can totally, you know, be Muslim and Christian." I'm like, no, you can't if you're smart. And if you start putting these things together, there's contrary facts. You have to make a decision.
All right,
there you go.
Okay, so we have like 4 other questions that came in. Vanessa was one. I'm gonna read them, because in your conversation you might be able to answer them all, and I can repeat some if you need me to. So Vanessa is wondering, is there a holy book? Lindell was wondering, is there somebody that gives like a sermon at your meetings? Like when you meet, is there like a leader like that gives a sermon? Is there an organizational hierarchy? You might save that one for last, because because you're talking levels, so I'm guessing, right? And then Rick was wondering if there is evangelizing.
Okay. So what was the first one again?
Is there a holy book?
Okay. So holy book, there's not one specific holy book. It would be the entire work of his research. So anything that he's written down, all of his lectures, and there's like 25,000 hours of lectures that he recorded, where he's just going on and on. The films, all that is considered canon. So everything that was developed is considered, I guess, the Bible of Scientology, and it's all valid and it's all applicable. We have a viewpoint that you go strictly by the book, and you'll get the best results. So there's people that like take a part of Scientology, they alter it, they make their own thing. And for the most part, that's frowned upon, because you generally are altering the technology, and then it goes into weird practices, and later Scientology then becomes unrecognizable. So that whole recorded record of everything from Dianetics all the way to the stuff he developed in the 80s is our Bible. It's a lot of studying. So you can't really get to that in a week. You really have to study all of it. And it takes a long time, because there's such a huge volume. So to anyone who would be interested in trying to get the basics, there's really 2 books that form the foundation of both Dianetics and Scientology. The first one is Dianetics, of course, the one with the volcano on the cover that everyone knows. And that explains kind of the hidden mechanisms that affect you in your mind. And then there's the fundamentals of thought, which covers the basics of Scientology. And that's a really good primer of most of the main concepts that are useful to the layperson. But really, the Bible, the Holy Book, is all of it. It's really the entire thing developed by L. Ron Hubbard. Somebody just asked a question, who was the founder? The founder was L. Ron Hubbard. He was originally a science fiction writer and then became a religious leader. All right, so there was another question about evangelizing.
Right.
Yes, there, in a sense, it mostly comes from individual contact. I guess like most of them, really. We don't go around and knock on doors like a Jehovah's Witness would or a Mormon. In major city centers, you might see Scientologists handing out tickets for personality tests. That was huge for a long time. Really annoying. I used to do it. I used to go out the street, say, "Hey, come in and see a film or see a personality test." Annoy the hell out of everyone. But every once in a while, you get somebody in, and they're like, "Oh, this is cool." So that's why it was done. They've started a TV network recently. I don't know how good it is. I haven't watched it. It seems kind of corny to me, so I'm not going to say that it's very successful. So all these little outreach efforts, I guess the way that most of the evangelizing comes from individual contact. And I do it myself. I'll see like somebody in trouble, somebody crying. I'm like, what's going on? Like, you've been a wreck for a month. Every time I try to fix you, you end up on the floor. What is really going on? And that's kind of the way you enter into somebody's situation, and then you provide them a tool or something that'll help them. And they're like, "Oh my God, that really worked. Tell me more." And that's generally how it works. But there's not like a specific like, "Well, we're going to walk around and have this dedicated program of trying to reach the masses." There's different things that you do. So the personality tickets was good for a while. Inviting them for a film was good for a while. Selling books was another thing. You might see every once in a while, you might see somebody out in the street selling Diadex books, but it's not a really dedicated evangelical or missionary kind of function. It's more like one-on-one. All right. Okay. So there was a question about hierarchy.
Yes. Does someone give a sermon at your meetings? Like, and then are they even called meetings?
Okay.
What is the organizational hierarchy?
Okay. So at the churches, this is what I meant before, but there's not really a Scientology spirit or community. Ostensibly on Sundays, there's a Sunday Mass. That has nothing to do with anything that you associate with a Mass. It is somebody basically reading off some of LRH's, L. Ron Hubbard's work, and then maybe a brief discussion or two. But it doesn't really resonate the same way a Christian Mass does, and that's perfect. That's just my opinion. It just is not a thing. And when I was on staff, we hardly ever did them. It was just, they were poorly attended, and once they were there, it was kind of like, So there's not really a Mass. And I think that's a problem. I think we need to get that in. I think we need to get the community involved, food, picnics, all the stuff that normal churches do. For some reason, Scientology doesn't do it, and I think we need to do that to bring, more of a community spirit. The hierarchy, the upper level of Scientology is called the C organization. How do I start describing this? Okay, so in the 60s, L. Ron Hubbard took the entire shebang, the entire upper organization of Scientology from St. Hill Manor in East Grinstead, Sussex, England, and went to the sea to start a project to research his past lives. So he would go to a place and he would describe, this is what you're going to see here, hand it off to the missionaries. That's what they were called. They would go off to the land. He would remain on the boat, and they would confirm or deny whatever he predicted. Supposedly great success with his predictions. He decided to keep this operation on the sea, traveling from port to port, and he did that for a few years. And then eventually, this people of the group of Scientologists that was with him became like the elite Scientologists, and they became the Sea Organization because they were literally on the sea. He landed, I think in 72, maybe, I might be off on the years, to Florida and established the Sea Organization in Clearwater. Eventually in Clearwater. It was a couple of false starts. And he kept the tradition of this organization being the elite of Scientology. Those guys are 24/7 Scientologists. They live, eat, breathe Scientology, and they're in their specific, almost like a military. Like they're in their barracks and they live there, and that's their life. 24/7 Scientology. They do whatever is needed. They are the elite of Scientology on planet Earth. Let me tell you, these people are amazing. I would never choose to be one, but they are amazing. They can get things done, which I've never seen another group of human beings done, because they have a singular purpose, which is to expand Scientology. So a lot of crap has been talked about this organization. Yes, it has problems. Yes, they can be mean. Those individuals can be mean. It is literally like a very efficient military force that does not fight. But they can get stuff done. You need a house built, it's like, boom, they can do it. You need a tax exemption from the IRS, they achieve that. The only religion that was in that huge controversy that the IRS ruled against, that was able to overturn it. But they've also done some very nasty things. So, and I can talk about that later. So they are the upper echelon. Below them are what's called the Class 5 organizations. Class 5 being a level of spiritual progress. So they can deliver up to Class 5 on what's called the bridge, which is like a level, different levels of spiritual progress. So those Class 5 organizations are the churches of Scientology that you see anywhere. Those are the regular churches. They have an executive director, and they have a governing board, executives that control the daily goings-ons, and they have the regular staff member. Each one does a specific thing. That's very, very highly organized, extremely organized. Everything is written down. He developed a policy for the entire organization, head to toe. Really remarkable for one person to do that. Incredible. And then below that are informal organizations called missions. And those are, it can be like two people to get together and decide to study, and they invite a couple of friends over. And those are more informal, loosey-goosey kind of things. So it's a hierarchy from those missions that then when you want higher services, you go to the Class 5 organization. When you want even higher services, then you go to the C organization. And that's kind of the overall management structure. There's some little boards at the top, different little organizations, but they all generally follow that flow. So it's missions, orgs, and the C organization, which has various components to it. So one controls the copyright, the other one controls legal affairs, so the C organization is kind of the top. Hopefully I answered that without being too long-winded. Oh, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm muted. I'm sorry, it was my
Okay.
fault. Yeah. I said, very good, thank you. So
Yeah.
the other question we had was, is there a cost or a tithing requirement or expectation?
Yes, and this is the part where I will admit that Scientology has earned every bad reputation it has earned, because this has been an area of abuse. So yes, there's a cost for the courses in order to learn how to become a counselor. Now, those courses to learn how to become a counselor are also particularly beneficial to your life, because it kind of teaches you how life works. So you go through the communication drills that I mentioned earlier briefly. You go through learning how to operate the e-meter, which is an electronic device, which kind of indicates what's happening with thought. You learn just a whole lot. So it has value personally, in addition to learning how to become a counselor. That is expensive, but it's not as expensive as the individual counseling. Individual counseling is ridiculously expensive. How expensive? Trying to think. It's definitely in the thousands of dollars, in the multiple thousands of dollars for, I think they sell them in 12.5-hour blocks. So if you buy a 12.5-hour block of what's called auditing or counseling, it can run you, $5,000-6,000 expensive. I think it's probably now more expensive than psychotherapy, but it used to not. And that's my issue. It used to be very, very affordable. It used to be that you can get this stuff extremely affordably, and therefore it expanded, and people were able to get the benefits without being rich. Now it has become, and this is my opinion, very elitist. So rich people are getting the benefits of Scientology, where you and I and regular people are not getting it. This is why I'm an independent, because I do have training and I'm able to counsel people for either free or for cheap, 25 bucks an hour or 50 bucks an hour, depending on what it is, just to cover my time, because it's either I'm auditing or I'm working, and I make between $50 and $100 an hour in my regular job. I got to replace it somehow. But I do a lot of free counseling, a lot of free education. So I think that's where Scientology is going to end up, where that big mega church type of money-centered thing is going to eventually go away, and it's going to become more individual practice, where trained people who can train themselves, or with the help of somebody like me, I'm a trained professional course supervisor in Scientology. I can help train, and we just help each other, as opposed to this beast that Scientology has become and is rightly criticized for, in my opinion. Again.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I'm gonna ask Marsha's question first, and then Shayla's question.
Sure.
So Marsha asked, why has Scientology become so popular in Hollywood? Why would you think it's become so popular in Hollywood?
I think because of the elitist aspect. Hollywood, like anything new or goofy, they're like, woo! So that's why you have, yoga and, whatever kind of thing that people come up with. These people have a lot of money and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to go get my colon cleanse with coffee. Any kind of weird thing, they're going to go for it first because they got the money. So they can do that. So I think back in the 80s and 70s, it became like a hip thing to do. And now it's still kind of a hip thing to do, although because of people exposing certain of the negative parts, hello, little boy, it's less popular. So, and then like for example, I just saw somebody put a note about John Travolta. I'm sorry, about Kelly Preston. She died at age 57 of breast cancer. John Travolta is an OT, a higher level Scientologist. Kelly Preston was an OT, also a higher level Scientologist. And they lost their son Jet a few years ago to a seizure. Now you would say, okay, well, Scientology is supposed to be so great. Why are these people dying? Right? There's a disconnect. There's something wrong. If you're supposed to be, so able as a person through Scientology, why are these bad things happening? And I don't quite have the answer to that. I have certain suspicions, but since they're just opinion, I'm not gonna share them here. But I think people are catching on to like, hey, John Travolta was successful. He did attribute it to Scientology. He had his great career. All the people had fabulous success supposedly with Scientology, but now there's scandals. Now there's deaths. Now there's problems. So I think people are kind of backing away a little bit because the emperor has no clothes and people are calling him out. And I think it's a very good thing. I think that transparency and truth are what's going to make Scientology effective again as a movement. And that right now we don't have that in the movement. And I think that needs to return. And I think that people questioning Kelly Preston's death as an OT7 or OT8, I believe she was, of breast cancer at age 57, should throw up question marks. Also, another high-profile Scientology death in the same week, 1 or 2 days before, was Lisa Marie Presley's son. Killed himself, the son of a Scientologist. So if Scientology is supposed to be so good at mental health and spirituality and fixing things, that is a huge problem. He should not be dead. So those questions need to be asked, and I think Hollywood might be waking up soon.
So the second part of that question about Kelly Preston was like, what does a funeral look like in Scientology? Like, I think a lot of us know what some typical funerals look like, but what was?
Yeah, similar. It's just the wording is a little bit different because we have the belief that we come back, not strictly the same reincarnation as Hinduism, because they believe you can reincarnate into any kind of life form. We just believe you'll come back into another human body. So it's kind of like a farewell hopefully you have a good transition, and we'll see you soon, friend, type of a deal. So it's probably a bit less crying, because it's more of a there's more optimism involved, as opposed to, oh my God, we just lost this person. Yes, there is that sense of grief, of course, of loss. There's also more of a sense of optimism and kind of a farewell to the person and wishing them good luck on their return.
Okay. The other question was how do you become a Scientologist? How do you leave Scientology? How do you practice independently? And then does Scientology teach that it can heal physical illnesses as well?
Okay, so it's a lot of questions at once, so you might have to remind me at one point.
I know.
How do you become a Scientologist?
So, yes. How do you become one, and how do you leave being one?
Okay, simply deciding I'm a Scientologist and then deciding I'm not a Scientologist. Simple as that. If you're a staff member, there's a contract that you sign to work for a period of time in exchange for the free auditing and training you're going to receive. And if you break that, you will be given a bill for the training and auditing that you've received that you didn't fulfill your end of the deal. That's about it. Generally, you become one through, like I said, one-on-one interaction, reading a book, et cetera, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to go into the official church and start taking courses. That's generally how it works. In the independent field, it's like, well, somebody told me you were a counselor and I need help, and then you become a Scientologist that way. In general, it's just you read a book or you get some counseling and you're like, okay, I think I like Scientology. I'm going to apply it, and therefore I'm a Scientologist. But that's it. There's no like baptism or catechism or anything like that. It's just simply your own personal decision. And if you don't like it anymore, you just say, I'm kind of done. That's it.
Okay. So that would be how you practice independently. I think you touched on that. Does Scientology teach that it can heal physical illness as well?
It does, but never. What it teaches is it handles a predisposition towards illness. What do I mean? It's been very well recognized that stress can lead to illness. So we would address those causes of stress. Whatever say, we're going to fix your broken arm with just auditing. It's ridiculous. But we'll say you broke your arm, it's not healing. We might address your mind, what stress factors you're going through, to figure out if we can't address the mental factors of why that's not healing. So it would be in conjunction with medical treatment. The first thing is always, if you're sick, go to the doctor. And then after you're kind of under control physically, we might address that sickness. But I don't think I've never seen anything that says, if a guy's got a cold or the flu, run this process and that flu will magically go away. That doesn't exist in Scientology. You'll make him more comfortable. You might blow some of his symptoms. He might feel better, but never like a cure, like curing cancer or anything like that. No.
Okay. So, and then I think they were in the news years ago. I forget that I'm 40, and it was probably when I was in my early 20s. But they were in the news years ago about some of the health stuff. So I think sometimes that's where that question probably still comes from. Then Shayla was asking, do you dispose of the dead? So,
but there's no prescription for that. It could be whatever you want. It could be cremation, it could be burial. It's up to the person and their family.
Okay. Because I was going to say, like, there's some faiths that they do not believe, they don't do cremation. There's some faiths that do cremation and
yeah, no, in this faith, it's up to you. There's no rule about it.
Okay. Any other questions? Now, did you say was there a machine that did you say you had, was there something?
An e-meter. E-meter.
Okay.
Shall I show you mine?
Yeah, sure, absolutely, because I have no clue what the heck that is. This is the most I've talked to my cousin in about 10 years, just so you all know.
What was that? I missed it.
I said, this is the most we've talked been about 10 years. I probably should talk a little bit more often.
Facebook is fine.
You know, he charges, Christina. You know,
Yes,
he
we're
charges-
cousins.
He charges $25 for 15 minutes, right?
All right.
But I see that talking with my hands is definitely genetic.
Yeah. All right. So very simple. This is just to adjust this needle in various settings. So what happens, and I'm not going to plug it in right now. I don't really have the space to plug it in and show you. But let me see if I can turn it on and get the needle somewhere on the dial. All right. So the needle's on the dial right now. All that happens is during a counseling session, in response to a question, the needle will do something like this. So I'm going to say cats, dogs, apples, pears, boom. I know the answer is pears because it moved on pears and it fell and indicated something on pears. So, and I'm being ridiculous. We'll never ask questions about pears, dogs. I'm just giving you words, random words. It might be something about death or sadness or whatever it is, okay, some kind of spiritual thing. So this thing will indicate, you know, that something happened in the mind of the person in response to this question. It'll move, it'll do things. The end result of the process is what I'm actually doing here, which is called a floating needle. So the needle is just free. There's not really any encumbrances, and it's moving back and forth in a slow rhythmic manner. So that's when, you know, the process is ended, and in the mind of the person, things should be fine. In the meantime, until it hits that state, the needle's going to be doing crazy things like this. It'll be falling. It might rise. It might do things. And your job as the auditor is to clear up what's happening in the mind of the pre-clear. So you get that nice floating needle, and then you can move on. And that's literally all this thing does. It just shows you, boop, that in response to your question, something happened in the mind of the pre-clear. And how it registers that is using these things. So you hold this. It passes a very small current through the body. There'll be imagine cables coming out of here. They go to that machine. You hold it. You stay still, and it registers the thought. And that's why Scientology is very, very effective in detecting the root cause of people's issues, because it shows up electronically. It just does. It's like a very, very, very sophisticated lie detector. Way more sensitive than a lie detector, way more accurate. And it requires specialized training to know what this machine is actually doing. And this machine was why there was a hubbub about, oh, you're healing people, because they thought that this was some kind of a medical device, but it's not. It's just registering that in response to a question or some kind of stimulus, there's a reaction, and you want to find out what that reaction was and clean it up, and that's all. Here, for example, if you ask somebody what's wrong with them, they'll generally tell you a million things. It's not what's really wrong with them. With this device, you're talking, oh, it's my back, it's my foot, it's my knee, it's my cousin. Okay, cousin. That's the read. That's where you explore. He can talk about his back all he wants. You want to know about that cousin, because that's where the electrical charge is, and that's what you explore. Much more precise than a psychotherapist saying, yeah, it probably is your back. Oh, it probably is your knee. I don't know. I'm going by the E-meter. So that's the main difference. And that is probably, of everything in Scientology, the thing that separates it from everybody else is that we actually use a device to try to get to the root of that spiritual trauma.
Right. I can understand that, because I know, like, when discussing things, I can be wishy-washy, kind of, is what I've always said. And so that, or, you know, like women, we carry a lot of guilt over this and guilt from this and guilt from that, you know, and so I can see, like, if you were using that, it might help you to narrow down what the root cause is, instead of all the things that we feel guilty about.
Right, because if you don't, believe it or not, it builds up more charge. Right. If you're there sitting like, oh, it's my husband, he's such a jerk, and oh my God, and my kids and whatever, and then you start actually even taking it out on them, causing more tension and more problem, when in reality is that your boss re-stimulated you when you were a little kid, when you were bullied, and the right target is that bully 30 years ago, but you're taking it out on everybody else. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it gets to the bottom of things. That way you can approach your husband and your kid with a sane point of view in the now, right? You're not taking past experience and bringing it up to the present. You're right here, right now, totally present and totally really yourself, as opposed to using back yuckiness and bringing it up to defend yourself. You're totally you, and you can handle the situation the best as you can with your knowledge, as opposed to negative emotions.
Right, right. All right. So Lindell asked a question. She said you were raised Catholic. Do you currently believe in God? And if so, how does that fit in with your belief in Scientology?
I do believe in God. My belief, like, I had a big rebellion when I was, I don't know, 2nd or 3rd grade against God, just because I was in a Catholic school and I saw so much hypocrisy and I saw so much stuff. So I had a big rebellion. I was like, screw God, screw this Catholic, I hate it. And I saw that, you know, there was a lot of weirdness, like the God of the Old Testament doesn't seem anywhere near related to the God of the New Testament. So a lot of confusion and weird stuff. I'm like, this guy's a sadist. This guy's all about love. This guy will kill you if you look at him wrong. This one will forgive all your sins. So, you know, all that stuff, I was like, I'm done with it. So, but thanks actually to Scientology, I've been able to develop my own viewpoint and my own relationship with what I believe the Supreme Creator is. And it's much healthier. Much healthier, less dogmatic, and more of a personal thing. And what it's opened up for me is, like, I'm constantly grateful now. I'm very grateful for having a playground to play in, for having a body, for having my family, for having people that I know, for having, you know, even conversations like this and being able to communicate to people. I'm much more grateful to God for even the bad situations that I've experienced in my life, because they've all been lessons, really. And that left me for a very, very long time. I didn't have that spiritual depth for many, many years. And then, you know, through Scientology and also through life and other people. It's not just, I don't only do Scientology. I also like listen to, you know, plenty of other philosophies just to learn. And yeah, that kind of made me have a much deeper appreciation for what my concept of God is. Hopefully I answered your question.
Yes, I think so. Before that one, Vanessa had asked a question, and she was just wondering what you had mentioned before about returning back into another body after death. You know, like when you died, your like energy, I would say, kind of like left and kind of went to another body. And she was wondering if your family members would recognize you in that case.
You know, that is something that you're going to have to figure out for yourself. My opinion and my experience is, yeah, like there's connections that I absolutely cannot deny. But one thing I do want to clarify is that we don't believe that you have an energy or that something apart from you is your soul. What's looking at me and listening to me right now and observing, and when you turn your head, you look, that is the soul. That is the spiritual being. There's not like a weird aura or thing that you pet, like, oh, here's my little soul. You know, it's you. You just happen to be sitting in this body. It's just kind of like your vehicle, right, that you drive around. But it's no different from your consciousness. You, right now, your mind, your consciousness is the spirit. That is the thing that we believe in Scientology. Leaves the body and returns eventually to another body. And yeah, these connections that you have spiritually, they don't go away just willy-nilly. You know, the deep connections, in my opinion, they last. And I can recognize people, and people come into your life, and you're like, there's a reason there that we are connected right now. But that's not any part of the official thing. It's kind of what you discover in auditing as you go through the journey.
Okay, I gotcha. All right, very good, very interesting. Anybody else have any other questions? Because we're almost at about an hour. And I just want to make sure if we have any other questions. Go ahead, Shayla.
Do you have ghost and all other beings?
Sure.
Bats?
Yeah, sure.
How do they
There's
get to be there?
ghosts?
Ghost.
They're just people that haven't gotten back into bodies.
Okay, those are the spirits that haven't got back to the bodies yet.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Are there other, Sarah was just asking, are there a lot of other independent practitioners of Scientology?
Yeah, there are, and it's a little bit difficult because because we're independent, we all have wildly different opinions of how to practice Scientology. Whereas if you're in a church, it's one very strict way. So we're kind of all over the place. I happen to be very strict to the doctrine. I'm more of a purist. I want to apply Scientology as purely as humanly possible because I feel like that's what LRH wanted, and I feel like that's the best results. I don't like to mix it with too many different practices. And some of these guys will mix meditation with Scientology, or they'll take one specific part of Scientology and focus on that, like past lives, and then just do the past life therapy. And I'm like, it's just a very small part of it. So I go for the more traditional way, and there's a lot of independent Scientologists that will follow that, and then there's a bunch of independent Scientologists that will do whatever, or they won't even do much Scientology and they'll call themselves independent Scientologists. So kind of the wild, wild west out there, but at least now I've seen in the past probably 2 years, things are getting a little bit more organized in the field, because I think we've all realized we kind of need to be friends and stick together to some degree and not go at it just independently, because there's strength in numbers, and we can potentially reform the church and make it a friendlier place.
Very interesting. I'm curious, do any of you eat differently? Meaning, like, some faiths, some people in different faiths might be lean more towards veganism or vegetarianism, or like, is there any focus on that?
None whatsoever. I think it would just basically be a common sense thing of your first dynamic, which is your body, and you should take care of it to eat as best as you can. But there's no rules about that. There's no prescription. There's no like don't eat meat or shellfish like Jews or Muslims.
Right. All right. So 2 other questions was, does the soul come back in another human body, or can it become kind of in an animal? And the other one is, what does the church think about independent Scientologists?
All right, I'll answer them in order.
Okay.
Generally, the spirit goes back into the body. Very, very, I don't know of anyone who's really come back as an animal. I don't think it's impossible, but I think that most people want to come back as a person. So if somebody, really, like a cat lady, just hates humans, maybe she wants to come back as a cat. Okay, but I don't know anything about, no personal experience with that. They're out there. It's like, I hate everyone except my 30 cats. I want to be a cat. Hey, good for you. But generally, it's going to be a person, because it's the most evolved form there is currently on the planet anyways, So you want to, if you're trying to play this game, you want to come back as a strong player, which is a human. Cats, are not that high on the totem pole. And then the other thing is that, what does the church think? Church is not like me. No, because I'm not part of the fold, just like any other apostate. Any religion, pick one, does not like people to practice outside of the fold. Whether it's, I know Jehovah's Witnesses, one guy in particular that I interviewed a couple years ago in London, he told me the stories. I'm like, okay, it's just like any other religion. If you're not part of the official party line, you're going to get prosecuted a little bit if you're outspoken. If you disappear, you're quiet, nobody cares. But if you're outspoken, you're a target. So I've never been targeted because I'm not really anti the church. Like I said before, they do their own thing. I do my own things. And currently, we don't interact. If I were to be more and more outspoken, I'm sure that they would get on my case.
All right. Okay. I got you.
Do you need some books or some kind of direction from them? The original one.
Great
How do
question.
you get this?
Great question. Fortunately, because of the internet, all the materials of Scientology are available for free on the web. So whereas they had a strict monopoly, even on the upper levels, and the OT levels are called, they had a strict
Wow.
monopoly on that. Those are now out in the open, and anyone can now do the entire bridge, that's what it's called, the bridge, all the levels, for free if they partner up with another person with no church supervision or involvement whatsoever. So all the materials are online. Is that a copyright violation? Yeah, of course. You're not supposed to just download books. But, you know, there's various justifications for if this is going to be helping your soul, you can't really restrict it from the hands of humanity and be ethical and moral about that.
Right. Very good.
Thank you so much for giving us some insight.
You're very welcome. And you know, I wish there was a way to follow up if you had any more individual questions. You know, maybe Christina can compile them and you send them to me and I'll answer them via email or something. But yeah.
Yeah, I would say if anybody comes up with a question later on that they'd like to find out or ask or anything that piques their interest, you can email it to me and I can pass it along to Willie.
Yeah, and then as a closing thing, I want to say Scientology saved my life. It really did. I was a mess, and these people are very, very able, very capable, and I know I talked some smack about them today, but they're very good people. In general, they're very, very good people, and the technology is very miraculous. And it's a shame that it's not more widely used and known. And I wish that people, whatever religious faith they had, if they would just take a piece of this miraculous technology and applied it, I know we'd have a much better place called planet Earth. So don't discount it because of my criticisms of it or anything. Really explore it for yourself and just try to use it, and you'll find that it is well worth exploring. And now that we have it for free, even better, because now you're not even subject to the pressures of the church.
Yeah, it's very neat. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you said something, and I was thinking of a comment of. I know it's different faiths speak to different people too, and so I'm glad that it spoke to you, and it helped you, because I know that the foundational stuff has some very good psychology stuff in there. So, and thank you very much for being willing to sit and talk with us and tell us a little bit about it. I know I was looking for something a little different, and I thought that would be great. That you'd be great to help fill it in. And I know everybody that's on the call is probably used to seeing a facility and taking a look around and stuff like that, but I thought that this would be kind of an interesting thing as well, and something a little different. So if you guys would like to unmute and go ahead and say thank you and goodbye, you can.
Thank you, Willie.
Thank you very much for listening to my
Thank you,
long
both
rambling.
of you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Billy, and thank you, Christy.
Very informative.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Awesome. Just remember, anywhere you can find a meter, you can do Scientology. So it doesn't require a building. It's anywhere. So thank you very much for listening, and hopefully you guys learned something today.
Yeah, and thank you for
Thank
bringing
you.
this to us.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.